Hello and welcome to an all new episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the CryptoCast Network. Thanks, guys, for bearing with us again. This is take number 2, so we'll try this again. You guys can find us over here at CryptoCast.network, where you'll find all of our links, such as the YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, iTunes, and RSS. And of course, we have our apparel store here, our merchandise on our website. You guys can check out the CryptoCast shirt and the Bitcoin News shirt. And we are, of course, displaying our QR code at the bottom because this network is supported by viewers like you. So we hope we're producing content that you guys like. And of course, we are still doing the programming with Bitcoin.com workshop, where we'll be teaching C# developers how to integrate Bitcoin into their applications. And this is taught by the creator of the library himself, both myself and Nicolas Doyer, the creator of the Bitcoin library. And we are still trying to make our way across America. We're going to be Las Vegas only a week away, September 1st. And then finally San Francisco on October 13th and Seattle, November 3rd. With that away, let's disconnect and let's stop the screen share and maybe hopefully not disconnect the entire stream this time, guys, and get into your quick bits section, because there is a bunch of news I always like to go through real quick, guys, before we get into the main topics to make sure that everybody is up to date with the topic. So first, here we go. Andreas just recently tweeted out, no, we're not going to be disconnected, Francis. It's okay. Today, Andreas tweeted out, guys, that he tweeted something out that I've been trying to tell people all year long for at least a year, and this is about about the Lightning Network itself becoming this interoperable application layer above Bitcoin that all other blockchains can connect to, and having Bitcoin be that store of value, and of course Satoshis be the unit of account. Now, this is going to, in my opinion, be the actual application layer, the World Wide Web above the Internet of Money that is Bitcoin. I believe it's not going to be ILP or Ethereum or anything else. I've been saying this all year, and it's nice to finally see somebody like Andreas acknowledge this as well, because there's just no point in creating an interoperable layer without something that has a store of value anchoring it, and that is, of course, what Lightning Network has in the form of Bitcoin. And now this is another really great news article, guys. Bit 158 has come out, which is about compact block filters for light clients. And this is important because this is going to allow Lightning networks to work better on mobile wallets. So this is going to help Lightning scale. This is going to help Lightning become more mainstream. And so this is an important bit, and I encourage everybody to check that out. And of course, guys, the links for that and everything else we discuss here is in the show notes as always. And people are, again, guys, people are, despite this Bitcoin being down, people all over the crypto the Twitter crypto sphere is still singing Bitcoin's praises. We have people like the co-founder of Reddit, Alex. He's still optimistic. There's an article about him championing Bitcoin and giving his bullish insights and sentiments. And then this is a pretty funny news story, guys. CNBC has been labeled as a reverse indicator because apparently this article states that they have been 95% inaccurate, right? So they have been inaccurate 95% of the time. So if you guys do the opposite, you'll be right 95% of the time. So that's an interesting article. And then there's more and more talk about Bitcoin and energy in the news. Looks like banks, this article is saying that banks consume over 3 times the energy that Bitcoin does, according to this researcher, and that really if Bitcoin were to mature over 100 times its current market size, it still will only equal about maybe 2% or so of the energy consumption. So this is just really important to read. Check out this article, guys, because Bitcoin itself is far more efficient than the traditional financial system. And it's just, it's really easy to place blame on Bitcoin because we can see all the stats live and how much energy is being used. But of course, people don't take into account all the huge towering skyscrapers of bank buildings all across the world, and all the planes and the trucks it takes to move all the coin and all that stuff. So check this out, guys. This is really important because people like to FUD a lot about Bitcoin and electricity. So check out that article. And then Rene Pickhardt has a great 5-minute C Lightning video, guys, teaching you how to connect to your C Lightning node with Python. And this is a great tutorial, even if you're not a Python developer, because it will sort of give you some insights into how you connect to these Lightning nodes. And this is a big one, guys. Despite the big drop in Bitcoin, Bitcoin has surpassed gold. The actual settlement volume on a 24-hour basis, Bitcoin has surpassed it just last Thursday. So that's really important to see. More and more people, the liquidity is growing with Bitcoin. More and more people are getting into Bitcoin, and now we're seeing evidence of this with surpassing gold in settlement volume. And Bitcoin, MTGOX is back in the news again, guys. They're the creditors. If you suffered a loss with MTGOX, you can now go and file for your rehabilitation claim. And if you may or may not get it, but this is just something that's finally come down the line after years and years of this debacle. So check out that story, guys. And then this is pretty funny. The Japanese internet giant GMO has switched their entire mining capacity any mining capacity that they had for BCH has now been switched over to Bitcoin as of July of this year, which of course, for obvious reasons, right? The value of BCH is collapsing. It's now splitting in two. There's just seems to be no value behind that chain. So check out that article. And then finally, that was the final article, because the next article is talking about Bitcoin Cash splitting. But again, guys, you got to check that out yourself. It's pretty hilarious, the infighting going over there between Jihan's team and Roger's team, and then of course Fake Satoshi's team. Pretty crazy stuff. But with that aside, guys, let's get right into the topics. Let's introduce our guests and get into the topics. So first, joining us, we have again Mr. John Carvello. How you doing, John?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Awesome to have you here again. We really appreciate you guys being on the show on such short notice. And then we got Francis joining us again. Francis, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Vortex. It's awesome to be here again.
Yes, our resident genius on the show, ladies and gentlemen. He's got all the insights into mining and all sorts of stuff. So we really appreciate him being on here. And again, guys, we try to bring you, people that are working in the space, actual entrepreneurs, investors, people that are working in the space, not just, talking heads. So we really, really appreciate these guys coming on. And, I'm just really, really proud to, again, bring you guys panelists that I believe are worth your time. So let's get into the first topic. We'll go with Francis first on this. Francis, so, the SEC has released all sorts of crazy things this week. They've walking back and forth. They're saying that they've denied all of these 9 ETFs. And now they're telling us that, nope, well, hold on a second, pump the brakes. We're actually going to go back and review that a little bit. So maybe, Francis, you can give us some insight into what the heck is going on here. And are we now possibly, can we see an ETF be approved?
Yeah, so I am kind of confused about the situation regarding the ETFs in the US, because it's hard for me to pinpoint why they're not getting approved. What is the exact holdups? Seems like some of the reasons that they've been citing over time have been changing over time. But I've always really had the same discourse regarding ETFs, which is, the ultimate objective of the ETF is to achieve financialization of Bitcoin. And I would direct our viewers to another podcast, which was Trace Mayer with Caleb Long. So that was one of Trace's most recent interviews, and that is probably one of the best conversations ever recorded on tape about Bitcoin and financialization. And one of the main arguments of Caleb Long is that she talks about the Bitcoin asset as being an equity-based asset versus a debt-based asset, and the idea that you can't create more of the equity-based asset without being found out, right? So the goal of an ETF really is to get all that investor liquidity into Bitcoin. So I don't think that is something that's necessarily done via an ETF. The institutional investors that I'm seeing right now are getting into Bitcoin via more sophisticated mechanisms like investing and loaning. A lot of the mechanisms have to do with mining companies, for example, that will hold cryptocurrency. People invest in those companies to get exposure to Bitcoin. So investors want to get exposure to Bitcoin via their Bloomberg terminal, which is essentially the goal of the ETF. I think there's many other ways for investors to get that kind of exposure. And at this point, I've just kind of stopped caring about the ETFs. And I think we should just honestly, I'll say this to just everyone on Twitter, I think we should just stop thinking about the ETF altogether, because none of us can do anything about it, and there's nothing we can do to help the ETF get passed. And at this point, we should just be thinking of, let's do something else than just the ETF. And if people feel like institutional investors don't have enough exposure to Bitcoin, and the ETF is not happening, well, that's an entrepreneurial opportunity to be solved, and you can figure out a business like Bakkt did and lots of companies did, which allow people to get this sweet exposure to Bitcoin with minimal custodial risk and with liquidity.
Yeah, a very good point, Francis. Let's, I want to second that too, because look, financialization of Bitcoin is going to happen, right? There's just simply, there's no stopping it at this point. People are going to want to have a piece of Bitcoin. The investor demand is already through the roof. This is why this is why there's 9 ETFs there in the first place, right? People want to hold this asset. So I think you're right, Francis. I mean, this is going to happen. We should probably stop putting so much faith and stock into just the first ETF. It will be an unprecedented thing, and it will be a great thing for Bitcoin, and it will again move the ball forward. But again, there's so many more important things to be worried about with Bitcoin that's in Bitcoin right now, even to work on Bitcoin, not necessarily be worried, but to pay attention to besides the ETF, besides the financialization of Bitcoin, because that's going to come. And again, guys, this is going to come. The solution that we're waiting for, I think, is custody. Is custody, right? That's the big thing that it's on everybody's mind, all the institutional people's mind, people that are trying to get the SEC or trying to get these ETFs approved. Custody is the problem that they're trying to solve, and this will be solved. And again, it's not even custody per se, because obviously Bitcoin is completely secure. It's third-party custody, right? It's the ability for this ETF to hold the Bitcoin securely so that people can trade it. So this is coming, and we shouldn't be worrying about it as much as we are, because it's great to see the SEC commissioner Pierce put out these retorts, right, to be up these posts to tell people, to make people aware that look, the decisions that they made may not actually be correct, right? Because they were if you were to apply the same things that they were talking about to gold, it simply gold wouldn't be able to have an ETF. So it's just important that we do examine these things, but not put too much precedence on them to say that look, Bitcoin's going to go to 1K without the ETF, or craziness like that. Because again, Bitcoin's a honey badger, it doesn't care. But the financialization, my point is that the financialization is coming. It will be here. We're lacking the custodial solution, and that's what these ETFs are going to provide. So we'll go with John and get his take on this. What do you think, John, about the discussion so far, and about this, about the SEC trying to get these approved?
As far as this direct incident where they're talking about that they denied all of these current ones on the table and now they're going to review some or all of them, I don't know, they kind of make it sound almost like they weren't even taking it seriously, like they had interns look at it and now they realize that people are paying attention and they have to review and make sure that they have a good reason for denying these ETFs. I don't know, but I think that the interest from the crypto side and ETFs is goes back to the first half of Bitcoin's life, where we were all a little more ignorant, a little more excited back in the first few years, where we wanted to promote Bitcoin for all the reasons that would make it pump. We wanted merchants to adopt it. We wanted to say it was fast, that it was cheap. We wanted to say all these things to get more people on board so they could hold our bags when we wanted to sell them for a higher price. And, we used to be just like shitcoiners. And now I think that as we've matured, we realize that, one, like Francis said, we don't need an ETF to get big money to be able to buy Bitcoin. If big money wants Bitcoin, they'll find it and they'll buy it. I don't think they need an ETF to do it. And we don't even know now, if the ETF is going to be a real reason for it to pump. I mean, when we got the futures markets listed on Wall Street markets, it was the top. And then since then the price has been coming down. So, it's not necessarily, adoption of mainstream Wall Street financial services isn't necessarily going to affect the supply and demand significantly. It could just be that people already know how to get Bitcoin and they'll get it without an ETF. Then you can also argue that it might not even be a good thing. You talk about custody and you talk about the fact that Bitcoin is made to remove trust. And now we're saying we want everybody to buy their Bitcoin in a way, or we want big money to buy their Bitcoin in a way that actually requires trust. So now you have to trust these custodians of this Bitcoin. And now you create a weak point where if a lot of value gets put into these ETFs and they get hacked, they lose money, or even worse, they start selling Bitcoin they don't have, things like this, we could have some real tragedies come out in the future where something bad happened because of trust, when the whole point was that the whole value of Bitcoin is to buy it in a way that you don't have to trust others. So the ETF is kind of, antithetical to what we're actually trying to do here in the first place.
That's a good point. Again, because the mantra is, of course, don't trust, verify, right? That is the principles that we're trying to push forth with these type of cypherpunk ideals with Bitcoin. And, a good point that somebody in the chat made is that I don't think, John, maybe it will be quite as bad as if the ETF used multisig, right? If they still allowed you to control at least a portion of the keys, then maybe that would still be a part of the Bitcoin ethos, I think, or fall under the Bitcoin ethos, because again, we wouldn't be giving them 100% control.
If it was multi-sig with the actual individual customers, maybe, but giving those customers those keys is still a trust process. And those people, there's a lot of technical, customer service to overcome with having investors being able to hold their keys and have them hold their keys securely. And it still gets into hairy issues. I'm not saying that I don't want to see an ETF happen. I'm just saying that, be careful what we wish for.
Absolutely, good point. Francis, do you want to close us out on this topic?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it would work to allow the ETF, legal contract holders to have keys. I'm not sure exactly how New York Stock Exchange-based ETF works, but normally, if you can allow people to withdraw and deposit, that's probably not as part of the ETF format. I'm not sure, but regardless, one of the formats that in Canada, so I'm advisor to a company which is trying to do a closed-end fund in Canada. The big difference with a closed-end fund and an exchange-traded fund is that the closed-end fund, we just kind of like issue a set amount of shares, at the beginning of a period of time. It's like, let's say, like we'll issue like 1,000 shares worth 0.1 Bitcoin or something of that nature, and this is fixed in time. Regulators prefer that because you can't manipulate the market easily with that. For example, with an ETF, like someone can just buy like hundreds of millions of dollars of the ETF, and then the ETF company has to like go out and like buy those Bitcoins and hold them. And this allows a lot of people to manipulate the market. So and ultimately, I don't know if we mentioned that, but I do ultimately think that is the SEC's probable biggest fear with an ETF is like rapid market manipulation that wrecks U.S. investors. So yeah, and it shouldn't be considered a way to buy Bitcoin. Like the ETF is purely, for me, the value is purely speculative for like large investors to get exposure to that. I don't think it's going to have a broad like adoption. If people are not adopting Bitcoin when they're buying an ETF, they're just speculating on the price with lots of liquidity. That's really it. It's not the same as other forms of financialization. And it's certainly not the same as stuff like Backed, that has like short-term, Bitcoin futures and stuff like that, which can be used in a practical way in adoption to like hedge yourself. So yeah, the Bitcoin ETF is not Bitcoin. It's just a way to bet on Bitcoin.
Yep, great points, guys. And again, the ETF, it's the overall goal. I'm sure the main goal of it is to bring in more liquidity, and it will one day. But it's what I think what the point we're trying to make is the liquidity is going to come either way, guys. Whether this ETF comes or not, or whether it comes this year, next year, this is just an asset that everybody wants to hold, and of course will continue to increase in value because of its limited supply. So I think we can close out that topic. I really appreciate everybody chiming in so far. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Everybody's having a great conversation in there. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. And if not, if you guys are liking the show, please hit that thumbs up. And we really would appreciate it too if you guys are listening to the audio version to please go ahead and give us a 5-star review on iTunes if you guys think that that our show merits that. We really appreciate all the feedback. And we just cracked 1,000 subscribers today, guys. So really thanks everybody so much for subscribing. And we have a lot more to go, guys. We have a lot more stuff to come, and there's going to be a lot more shows just next week as well. So let's go into the second topic of the day, which is China again, guys, are trying to apparently take the price of Bitcoin down, maybe to acquire more, because again, this is a game of accumulation. And looks like China now is doing a couple things. So they're blocking over 120 offshore digital currency exchanges, the IP addresses and such like that. In addition to that, they are also banning crypto accounts on WeChat. So I wanted to get the panel's opinion on this, see what's happening with China, or seeing if it even matters at this point, because of course, as we all know, last year, China essentially really began their crackdown, and the price, of course, continued to rise and rise and rise. So let's go with John first on this. John, what is your take on China hating Bitcoin yet again, doing more crackdowns? I mean, is this something that we should be worried about, that we should be paying attention to, or is this just like completely irrelevant in the overall Bitcoin space?
I don't know if it's something we should worry about. Maybe the damage is already done from when they shut down the exchanges. I don't know, but I think the next thing to look out for is for them, really cracking down on people mining at home, or seeing if they do things like restricting certain access for nodes and things like this. I think it is interesting to watch because we're seeing the kind of baby steps of a government trying to apply friction to Bitcoin. And they may be used as examples for other countries that feel the same way. And I think the main reason, I'm speculating, but I think the main reason is that China is really worried about capital flight. And they want to be able to control their currency value and their inflation rate and all of these things and manage their own economy in their own little bubble. And Bitcoin is kind of a valve that's letting out value. But they're not going to be able to stop people from putting value into Bitcoin. They're still going to find ways to do it. It's not that hard to get around, some of the things that they're stopping people. And there are still Bitcoin exchanges where you can have, pseudonymous accounts and things like this. So it's going to be difficult. But it will be interesting to see if they really start criminalizing things and start giving people, a lot of friction and seeing how bad they can really make it for people that want to deal in cryptocurrency in China.
Yeah, and I think I like the point about people still being able to get around it. I mean, I think they're even talking about that in the article where people will still use VPNs to get around this stuff. And that's just an important thing to understand that, Bitcoin is just something that can't be stopped. The very nature of it is to route around centralized authorities. And, same with the internet itself is to route around. So it just seems like this is such a huge futile effort. Let's go with Francis. Francis, I mean, is this effort completely futile? Like, are they really going to make a difference, a dent in Bitcoin at all, or even with their people at all with this type of totalitarian thinking around Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, China's like a really crazy and like weird example of cracking down on Bitcoin because they can do stuff that Western countries can't do. For example, banning like Bitcoin conferences or banning restaurants and hotels from renting out rooms to Bitcoin meetups. It's whenever I see stuff like that, I'm kind of reminded that like there are like actual totalitarian regimes in the world that will stop you from exercising your right to free assembly, which is really crazy. And I was just having a few conversations like last night with friends about this, actually, about WeChat and WePay. A lot of some of my friends work in AI in Montreal, and they work a lot with the algorithms to do like social scoring of people, and like so the thing with China is that the way to go after Bitcoin is to go after people in their homes and their houses, like go after people that are actually running nodes. Exactly like John said, like mining at home, that are doing small deals in their neighborhoods with their friends with cash. Like this is the stuff that in like Canada, for example, you can't ban that. Like there's no way to go after that. You would have to change our constitution. It's just everything's unconstitutional. But in China, they can just go straight into their backend access to like WeChat and whatever all the apps are doing and see everyone that's mentioning anything about Bitcoin and like anyone that has any kind of Bitcoin related traffic. And they can actually really shut down Bitcoin, like going that way, because like it's not by banning the exchanges that you're going to shut down Bitcoin. That's nothing. They've done it like multiple times and it never affects Bitcoin anywhere. It's really when they go into people's like homes, and like WeChat is a big backdoor for people's to let the government in their in their life. Regarding the bans and the VPNs, like it's hilarious. Quebec banned BitMEX. The Quebec regulators, even though there's like blatant scams like operating out of Quebec and like doing ads on TV for real and like selling their Ponzi coins to Quebec retail investors, they decided to go after BitMEX because of the futures on BitMEX. They said, well, BitMEX is a security. They're selling securities to the public, and then I was gonna short Bcash on BitMEX like 2 days ago. I was like, screw it. I don't have any Bcash. I sold all my Bcash a long time ago on the first day, but I was like, I really hate this shit so much. I want to short it. I wanted to short it just because I was really tweeting a lot about it. And I log into BitMEX and it just says no. Like even though there's no KYC or anything, they just caught my IP. And then obviously I just went home and like turned on my VPN and I could go on BitMEX. But by that time, BitMEX was closed for maintenance and the price of Bcash had gone up like 7% in like an hour. I'm really happy that Quebec banned BitMEX because it gave me an hour to go home and put my VPN on. and not get wrecked. But yeah, there's nothing they can do about that. Interestingly enough, there is something that regulators can do to stop foreign companies, and that's what Canadians are going to do. So the draft regs that we're negotiating with the government right now include provisions where, like, companies like Shapeshift basically and Binance are going to be MSBs and require people to ID everyone there. So like Shapeshift is going to like straight up become like, not illegal, but well, yeah, like unless you register and stuff like that. And the way that they're going to enforce that is by doing exactly like our next topic, actually, one of our next topics, like Operation Choke Point. The regulations stipulate that they will force financial institutions into a blanket ban of that company. So any Canadian financial institution all of them could be forced to blockade completely, like Shapeshift or Binance or something like that. So obviously this is like one of the only ways, I guess, like that a non-totalitarian government can do to enforce these things. And that would work. That would work to a degree where, Binance probably doesn't want to have all of the Canadian banks and their other banking partners, blacklist them and remove them from, like, ban Swift wires from going to their accounts and stuff like that. So that's I think the only kind of enforcement that we're going to see that way. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it would lead to a boiling point. Sorry. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I think that this helps us look at the value of having your blockchain be compatible with things like the Lightning Network, because eventually we'll be able to do atomic swaps across chains. And this won't help you get into crypto with fiat per se, but it will help you be able to change, like you mentioned, Shapeshift. If Shapeshift has to go AML or starts getting blacklisted by institutions, then you have options to where if the blockchain that you support, Litecoin, whatever other blockchains can be compatible with Lightning Network, you'll actually be able to transact atomically without middlemen, and it'll just be a matter of creating marketplaces for liquidity for the kind of coin you want to switch into. So things like Bcash will get left out because they won't support it.
Exactly. And this is what, a lot of people I try to argue with on Twitter, because they're saying, like, look, what if you add privacy to Bitcoin, everybody's going to ban it. And of course, my answer to that is let them try, right? The world's a big place. Somebody is going to take the opportunity that you are throwing away. And so that's kind of maybe how I'd answer that, Francis, is that, if the banks did try to come together to create a blockade against these exchanges like Shapeshift and Binance, I think that would set off a worldwide freaking set of domino effects that would just explode in more decentralized exchanges, explode in exchanges with liquidity that don't require KYC, just explode in all services that don't require KYC. It really will just shine a big, huge spotlight on KYC. And I think that is something that could be valuable, a situation that we could turn around, right? So some kind of craziness that we could see all this negativity and then turn it around and for a positive outcome, just like we did, right, with when they tried to ban MP3s and when they tried to ban certain things like that. We have these solutions like Tor. I mean, this is great. We have these solutions like Tor, these abilities to route around these censorship, these huge censorship, totalitarian government like authorities that these banks try to throw at us. But in the end, what the demand is there. The demand is still there. The demand is there for Bitcoin. The demand is there for Lightning Network. And if the privacy is going to come, the demand will be there for privacy. And I think that this is something that they just can't stop. But remember, no, the China is going a little bit crazy with their stuff, right? They have banned nearly 90 different exchanges, 85 ICOs, and officials are also blocking the cryptocurrency, related news, not just on WeChat, but news articles and things like that. But then you have right below it, then you have South Korea, right, who's embracing crypto, who's creating regulations that's going to benefit crypto and Bitcoin in general. And we have people that are going to embrace this stuff. And so even if something like a blockade comes along, there's going to be somewhere in the world that's going to provide liquidity to be able to make this stay afloat. It's going to come. I think that the avalanche is already upon us. It's already falling. And now we just have to sort of wait to see how people are going to react. And I think this is going to be a bit of an empty threat. because it does take a whole lot of actual coordination to have these central authorities ban a single company. We've seen them do it with things like WikiLeaks, and we've seen them do it before. But again, if they try to, that was more of a centralized organization. If they try to do this to something like Binance, I mean, there's going to be 10 more Binances that pop up or something. Because remember, Binance was funded by an ICO. It was funded by the market itself. It was created by the market itself. The market can go and create another one. So I just don't see that maybe quite as much as a problem. Let's see what you guys think. Francis, if you want to comment on that, or Francis first, and then.
I wasn't too sure what the question is, Vortex.
Oh, sorry. So maybe I was just going to see if you wanted to comment on what I think that even if they tried to create this ban for something like Binance or Shapeshift, I think that would just cause the exact opposite effect and create and just have a lot more companies remove their KYC controls. What do you think, Francis?
Well, I mean, decentralized fiat trading is really hard to scale. It's really difficult, and the main reason is because there is no objective data regarding the settlement of the fiat transaction that can be audited trustlessly by anyone. And by that, what I mean is, when you're doing a coin-to-coin exchange, for example, and you have an escrow, which is like a third-party escrow, like BISC does it, like BitSquare does it, like you're exchanging one Litecoin for one Bitcoin. If I'm like the escrow judging the transaction, I can see the actual Litecoin moving on the blockchain. I can see the actual Bitcoin moving on the blockchain. And as the escrow, I can say, well, yeah, of course, this transaction happened. All right, approve it. Or, the guy is saying that he didn't send the Litecoins. I sent the Bitcoins, he didn't send the Litecoins. You just look up the blockchain and you can see. Whereas for fiat trading, you would require an actual legal document and access to a bank account to do that. So that's, I mean, I'm very skeptical, seriously, of the scalability of decentralized fiat to Bitcoin trading. I think that if they really, really crack down on all the fiat, that it would be quite kind of hard to go around. Not as easy as people think, but definitely coin-to-coin trading. I actually don't really understand at this point why Shapeshift is still really being used, because if you look at drug markets and Open Bazaar and all of these markets and local Bitcoins, what's really, really hard to do is to, as I said, get some objective assessment as to the delivery of the goods or of the money in fiat or goods. That's why we have these escrows in Open Bazaar, and that's why all the darknet markets have these escrow systems. But for coins, you don't need an escrow. You just need them. Well, you do need an escrow, but you don't need a complicated audit. You can just look up the blockchain. So yeah, they're not going to be able to ban crypto to crypto trading. That's impossible, and that's really, really easy to do in a decentralized way. But yeah, the fiat to crypto side, I see a lot of people that are cheering for the end of centralized exchanges. That's cool, but we shouldn't really rely on that. I mean, there's not a single solution I see out there, not even BISC, for example, that I see that's scalable right now and that could really support broad adoption.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, crypto to crypto can just never be banned. I mean, they can try, but I don't think they're even going to attempt something like that, because that's obviously just so easy to do. But yeah, the fiat part, the fiat is the tough part. And yeah, they could do some kind of crackdown like that. But again, guys, the whole world, every single financial system is not going to come together. They just simply can't coordinate like that. They can definitely get a little bit of coordination going to ban a company for a little while, with Swift. But at the end of the day, someone's going to take that bet, the other side of that bet. Someone's going to take the other side of that bet, and they will be quite profitable from it. John, do you want to close us out on this subject?
Yeah, I just want to say that while I think that privacy is an inevitability on Bitcoin and other cryptos, I am interested in exploring the topic of whether or not it's better to have a chain that is completely transparent or one that is completely private. And I feel a lot safer seeing the privacy happen on second layers or on other blockchains even, and then achieving that privacy through atomic swapping into those other blockchains and back. I'd rather, I feel safer seeing that happen external to being on the main chain of Bitcoin than otherwise, because in the end, every place that everybody lives is in a government jurisdiction. And so you can't really change the fact that humans exist in a physical place on the earth. And so no matter how digital we make everything, we still have to live in meat space. So the government will have power. They do have powers to really strangle things and cause people a lot of problems. Even, for example, people paying their taxes. this is managed through auditing, so everybody knows somebody who was audited once. The government doesn't have the ability to audit everybody. It would be too much work. But they achieve, enough scare tactics to make sure people mostly behave responsibly by auditing enough people or auditing the right people, so you always know somebody who was audited. And they can do this the same way like we talked about earlier with Bitcoin. They raid one person's house that has a small mining farm, and now everybody that knows him and knows the people that know him are scared to have a mining farm. Or you arrest one guy for selling Bitcoin for cash, and now other people who sell Bitcoin for cash become scared. So the government does have power because they have guns. And so if they have guns and if they have the ability to take away your freedom, they do have the power to not necessarily kill Bitcoin, but to make it impractical if they choose to. So, I like the idea of being smart about, how we achieve our privacy, being smart about, thinking of the transparency of Bitcoin as being an advantage in some ways, and letting law enforcement say, okay, the problem isn't Bitcoin because we can trace Bitcoin. The problem is how people get Bitcoin, and letting them focus on that. And I do think that we shouldn't underestimate the value of exchanges. I think that if we didn't have exchanges like Bitfinex, formerly Poloniex, BitMEX, if we didn't have these places, a lot of the liquidity and a lot of the reasons, we don't know why people use these exchanges, but we know they like them because they don't have to give their ID. And so that eventually will probably go away. We all thought it would go away years ago, and they still exist, but it could still go away, and that provides a lot of advantage. If there for some reason is a lot of liquidity in Bitcoin because people want to avoid capital flight, avoid paying taxes, whatever reasons they want their privacy, if some of those reasons are legal and significant, then people will see a loss in Bitcoin utility if they create these choke points.
Yeah, a lot of great points. I was going to close out the subject, but now, John, I got to say a couple of points here real quick. So really, really great points. But I want to echo that, yeah, decentralized exchanges, though, maybe it's not popular to like them, right? They do provide liquidity right now. They absolutely are imperative right now, as they are right now. And they're going to do all sorts of different things. In fact, they're going to help the Lightning Network grow as well, because eventually they're going to all be connected with the Lightning Network, all sorts of different things. But it is important to remember that, in my opinion, that Bitcoin was public first for a reason, right? It was born out of the 2008 financial crisis. We wanted the ability to audit our own money. And really, the reason, because people ask me all the time, they're like, and you even mentioned it, John, they're like, why can't we do privacy first? There should be privacy first. And even Andreas in his recent talk said, I believe we should have privacy first. And it's like, that's really easy to say, really nice to say, guys, but here's the reality of the situation. The privacy tech simply wasn't ready yet. It was not ready to scale. It's not ready to scale right now, not yet, but it is coming. We have made huge, and I mean huge strides just in the last 12 months with things like confidential transactions, Schnorr signatures, all sorts of things are on the table and are coming. And again, we have Lightning, right, which is privacy by default, encrypted by default. So that is just amazing. So this stuff is coming, but it simply wasn't ready yet. And we know this. You can talk to developers. They can tell you this technology, and they can tell you about this technology and tell you that it's simply not ready to scale yet, right? There's a reason why Monero's transactions are friggin' huge and are very difficult to scale, because of the privacy tech. It's simply more difficult, more costly. But again, we are working around this. We are working on mathematics. There are people out there that are working on the mathematics to be able to bring this down to a reality, to be able to scale this technology. And Schnorr is one of the great technologies to be able to do that. Again, be able to aggregate thousands of signatures into a single signature is so powerful, guys. Very, very powerful. And that's coming down the line. So I just wanted to echo that and remind people that that's why Bitcoin is public first, and I think it should be public first. I think privacy should be an option on there, because I want the ability to freaking audit some financial institutions out there like centralized exchanges, because they have the ability to use Merkle trees to be able to cryptographically prove how much funding that they have, to be able to cryptographically prove that they have the reserves that they say they have. And you can't do that on Monero. You simply cannot do that on Monero. It is physically impossible. So I think that we still need the public part of Bitcoin, because it has served it well and it continues to serve it well. But we do need the option of privacy for people who want that. And like John said, it's usually better to do that on layers above, and that's what we're doing on that with Lightning. But again, we have a bunch of work that's coming down the line for the base chain too, like with Schnorr signatures and things like that. So we are going to bring it to the base layer too, but I just don't think that we're ever going to get to a point in Bitcoin where it's just encrypted by default. That's just not something I think that that is a good idea for Bitcoin and the chain itself. And again, just to echo on the fiat one more time, guys, the law enforcement is all over the fiat ramps, right? This is where, as both the panelists have said, this is where they target, this is where they monitor, this is where they try to see how and what people are doing with crypto. And so that's another reason why it's tough to get these decentralized exchanges off the ground, right? Because of the fiat, the whole fiat part. Anytime you touch fiat, you are going to touch banks, you're going to interact with banks, you're going to interact with law enforcement, and that is where things can get tough. But again, once we complete that loop where everybody's got some cryptocurrencies, there's the need to use fiat will of course be reduced year over year over year. So that was my little bit of a rant on that. If anybody wants to comment on that before we move on. No. Okay, good. Well, let's move on to our final topic of the day. Again, guys, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate everybody live here, over 100 people live joining us. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And we have the conversation going in the chat. A lot of great people talking about a lot of great things. Of course, we got one or two trolls that I might have to kick, but hey, that's just part of the deal. We really appreciate everybody in the chat. And again, guys, if you missed the show, please join us in the comments. Let us know what you think. Give us a thumbs up if you guys like what you see. And of course, if you are new, please subscribe to the channel. Let's go ahead and move on to our final topic of the day, which is, let's see, crypto isn't just money. It's a defense against discrimination. So there was a CoinDesk article talking about a couple of things here, basically how crypto is sort of interacting with the defense distributed world, with things that Cody Wilson is doing, with gun rights and with privacy. I wanted to sort of maybe have a little bit of a conversation about this and see what the panelists think about this. Like, how is this working? So let me ask you, John, first. How do you see crypto interacting with this defense distributed with this whole talk about how code is free speech? How do you see crypto interacting with that world?
Well, I think that crypto is great for delivering anything digital and removing the middlemen. So it's going to be nearly impossible to stop people from distributing code. It's already impossible, never mind, but it's also going to be impossible to stop people from monetizing distributing code digitally. So you're going to be able to always do this. This cat is out of the bag, and there's nothing that any government can do to stop that aspect other than restrict your ability to use the internet or computers. And, the core value of Bitcoin is it being permissionless and censorship resistant. And it's for reasons like this. It's so when people want to be able to receive donations for things that people don't agree with, they can't be strangled out because Visa stops accepting their payments or PayPal stops accepting donations. They can always accept in crypto, and nobody can stop that. So I think it's great. I think that as far as the freedom of speech aspect and with code and I think that again, I'll add a little bit of a practical side to this and say, in the end, we do live in meat space, and the government has ability to affect us, and they may end up just making distinctions. We're starting to see a scary distinction with freedom of speech where people are talking about hate speech, and hate speech is becoming this kind of different kind of way of talking that people feel okay censoring. I think when it comes to Supreme Court and things like this, it'll get defended and people will be allowed to do hate speech, and it'll be hard to discriminate people for doing hate speech. But we could see a similar effort with programming and with code. We could see them start to say that certain types of code are bad and regulated. And even just because something is impractical to regulate doesn't mean they can't try, and doesn't mean they won't have no effect if they try. It's all about chilling people. If they want something to stop, sometimes all you have to do is scare them and arrest enough people. But it's going to be really hard to make those arrests stick when it's something like code. Like if they want to bring Cody Wilson to the Supreme Court, my bet's on him. So it'll be tricky. It'll be interesting as the internet frontier and the digital frontier continues to develop with internet money and now internet connectivity. Whatever comes next, it will be interesting to see how they handle it.
Absolutely. Yeah, great points. Before we go to Francis, I just want to say that, yeah, this really does echo, sort of the Obama's administration with the Operation Choke Point, right? Where people, large institutions just stopping people's freedom, just stopping the ability for value to be routed to them. It's just crazy stuff how that can happen, and how it can be swept under the rug and people not remember. Because remember, this only usually happens to sort of a few select types of people, right? Sex workers, drug users, gun rights organizations, just all these various things that some parts of society deem to be not okay, right? And so with Operation Choke Point, we saw them in the US just go after hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses. They have this whole list of categories that just made no freaking sense. And so, since then, we've seen sort of crypto be kind of come into its own with this privacy aspect. With it was always the cypherpunk ideal to have this don't trust, verify, but regular people didn't quite get it yet until we've seen things like Operation Choke Point. We got it then, we understand then, and this is why I think Bitcoin's not going to take off in first world countries until they get it, until they see, until they go to the ATM and no freaking cash comes out, until they go to the bank and say, I like to withdraw my funds, and the bank says no. Then it's at that point where these types of ideals and values start really becoming clear as to their importance. So let's go with Francis here and have you comment on the discussion so far in this article. What do you think?
Yeah, well, when I was first explaining Bitcoin, one of the arguments that I was making, and I haven't made it in a long time, but I think it's a really good one, is that in the liberal thought, and I mean liberal like 19th century liberalism, the idea of individual liberty and responsibility and free market economics. So in this school of thought, and which is also embedded in the U.S. Constitution, we recognize that the very fact that we are born and that we exist means that we have rights that are inherent to us, and these rights are not granted by anyone. They just exist within us, and we decided to create governments as a way to protect those rights and to enact those rights. And Bitcoin is the first time where we have rights that are self-enforced, that don't require a third party to enforce, such as the right of property and the right of transaction. So Bitcoin is like the first real time where these rights exist wholly in our executable without a third party government that we entrust to protect them. So this is one of the main value propositions of Bitcoin. And in the case of these censored industries and products and services, I think that that's kind of Bitcoin's definitely its killer app. Regarding and I'll just echo what John said, is very smart comment. Whereas the cat is out of the bag, you can't stop it physically from happening. The only thing that governments can do is go after people and make examples. And this is why, for example, Ross Ulbricht is serving a consecutive life sentence. It's not because his crime was so severe. It's because the only enforcement mechanism is to scare people into not doing it. And the only way to do that is when you actually do catch someone, you fuck them up, for life, right? And create that example. The cat is out of the bag. You can't stop code from being distributed. Bitcoin is not even required for that to happen. You can just have BitTorrent and decentralized networks. A software project that no one knows about, that I know about, or that I've been talking about, is ZeroNet. ZeroNet is a decentralized website system where everybody seeds JavaScript, HTML, and CSS files to each other, and you run like an offline website. So your like BitTorrent node is just like seeding the software to everyone, and the website address is your Bitcoin public key, and the only modifications that are considered valid are modifications to the website that are signed with the private key of the website issuer. So what this just allows is literally just any kind of decentralized market using Bitcoin and BitTorrent for any kind of digital product, at least digital, it's definitely non-censorable. And one of the devs of ZeroNet that I met actually built or is building ZeroNet for his own censored content, which is, pretty rough and weird, maybe alternative sexual videos. But the censored world is not super nice. It's a bit nasty, to be honest. But these things are possible. And the last thing I'll add is I don't think how much people know about how Bitcoin saved a censored industry and how much of the Bitcoin price for a while was supported by a censored industry, and this was prostitution. So in the US, there's this website called Backpage, and Backpage is like Craigslist, and it allowed people to put sexual advertisements for sexual services online. And that was one of the biggest websites in the world for sexual ads. And it wasn't Operation Choke Point, that was a government initiative. And there's another form of initiative, which is just social peer pressure and corporate initiatives based on peer pressure. And that's what happened to Backpage. Even though Backpage was not a part of Operation Choke Point and was not illegal, they got all the financial companies to just censor them. So PayPal, Visa, all the banks, even PaySafe cards. Like PaySafe cards are meant like prepaid cash cards. Like that's what PaySafe is made for. And even that was banned. And from one day to the next, Backpage just started to accept Bitcoin. And nobody will ever know the amount of businesses that were created just after that day, when you had like hundreds of thousands of prostitutes all over the world that needed to place these ads on their website, which was censored. And they just started to use Bitcoin ATMs and Bitcoin services. And you saw an explosion of trading on Paxful, on local Bitcoins. You saw Bitcoin ATM companies like buying like and installing 10 ATMs. You saw Bitcoin consulting companies helping these users to make wallets. These users were paying about 30 to 40% premium in total, but they were still using Bitcoin. And at the end of the day, they were placing those ads on that website, and their livelihood, their income was undisturbed by this censorship. So that's like a huge, like that was in 2015. Can you imagine how bullish that made me on Bitcoin when I actually saw like censored people coming in my store and they were like not doing something illegal? So that was great. I could actually help them, but they were actively censored. People don't understand what it's like to have like a prostitute call you crying, the Bitcoin Embassy phone, that she can't go to work, she can't feed her kids because her ad's not going on the website and she just needs to work this weekend. And Bitcoin saved these people's lives. So yeah, I'm super bullish on the ability of information to be free. And regarding Cody Wilson's project, if he wants to sell schematics for Bitcoin, no one's going to be able to stop him for sure. He'll probably he'll probably get arrested himself, but the website's still going to operate presumably. And if the website is shut down, he'll just download ZeroNet and ZeroNet website, and one of his friends will run it from some other country where no one knows how to shut down the server, because there is no server. So the server side can be decentralized to feed the info. The payment side is decentralized. There's nothing really anyone can do about that, and that's kind of a hedge against the governments not fulfilling their job of respecting our inherent rights. And as long as we stay in the digital space and in the digital money realm, then we don't need the government to protect us and to allow us to help us enforce those rights. We can do it ourselves with crypto and consensus rules. So yeah, that's Bitcoin, and that's one of the main value propositions. And I'm happy that every time there is actual censorship, that Bitcoin can actually, like WikiLeaks, for example, like when there is actual censorship, Bitcoin always prevails. And maybe there won't be more censorship in the future, and Bitcoin will not be useful. But it's a really good hedge for sure for ourselves.
Yeah, I really think Bitcoin's I think there's still going to be censorship. I mean, that's what's beautiful about Bitcoin. As Francis said, this is the censorship resistant permissionless value transfer network that the planet has been needing for 1,000 years or more, right? So this is definitely the important part about Bitcoin. The biggest value part about Bitcoin is, of course, its censorship resistance. That's where people need to understand. And I agree on so many of those points. We can't tell people what is bad or good for them, right? What they want to do with their body, what they want to put in their body. We are learning this as a society, as a planet. We are more and more learning. We are becoming more and more, I think, empathetical to this, and we are growing as a people around this idea. But look, people are still getting their bank account shut down that don't have anything to do with this type of work, right? There are still regular people all over the U.S. that have their bank account shut down for one reason or another, and effectively they have been deleted from society. And now this is what Bitcoin offers: the ability to join a new society, to join a new financial system, a global financial system that doesn't care who you are, where you're from, or anything like that. And so people build these structures on top of them. Like Beautyon is building this, has this gift card system. I forget the name of the darn gift card system now. But Francis, what was it? You're muted. Oh yeah, Azteco, exactly. And so Azteco, this is great. This is an example of again, if they want to shut down exchanges or they make it more difficult to get Bitcoin, then we'll create new ways to get Bitcoin. And Azteco, from Beauty On is a beautiful example of this. You just go to a store, you buy it in the store, and you go redeem your Bitcoin on the website. So you buy the gift card, and then you go redeem the gift card online. So it's completely secure, completely easy, completely palpable for the average person to be able to get Bitcoin. And as Francis said, man, zero net. I just got to echo that one more time, Francis. That's a really amazing, powerful technology. When you combine that with like Tor, I mean, it gets really crazy. You can have these .bit domains that, as Francis said, is a domain publicly signed by your key or signed by your public key. So there's no way literally to shut it down unless they have your private key. So that is going to be really, really important. And, for the audience, if they don't know, I mean, Cody is using Bitcoin right now. Like he is calling for donations for Bitcoin. And the biggest thing is just recently is that Cody actually now is using BTC Pay server. He's actually accepting donations through the open source merchant platform called BTC Pay server. This is an open source merchant processor that allows anybody to accept Bitcoin on their website. And he is using this. He is taking advantage of this open source technology. He's literally using this technology for the exact reason that we built it, that it was built. And that is amazing to see. That's why I wanted to bring up this topic, because we see Cody using Bitcoin for the exact reason why we created Bitcoin, right? So that is just really, really cool to see. It's just another example, just like WikiLeaks, I mean, of course, they definitely thanked the government for shutting down their access because their Bitcoin was allowed to appreciate tens of thousands of percent over the years. So they are, of course, much better off. But yeah, this is just, I think, a great conversation to have. People need to be aware of this. And, Bitcoin, at the end of the day, this is what it's for, man. It doesn't care. It's economic certainty, and it will assert itself. And if you try to throw in things like, Operation Flashpoint, or all these types of things, all these different operations that are trying to censor people's ability to transfer value, we will find a way around it. And now that there's things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, it's just impossible to shut down in its entirety. So, John, we'll just go with you one last time to close this out, and I think we'll be good.
Sure. I just wanted to kind of rant a little bit on how it seems like what's happening is that Bitcoin and advancements in network technology in general are kind of make us find the middle we want to live in between two extremes. One extreme being absolute freedom, maybe anarchy, if you want to put it that way, to where, this is money that's going to allow all of the good things, all of the bad things, all of the questionable things. It's money that, if it's anonymous, will allow people to easily transact in illegal, immoral things like child porn, anything that you want to say that you don't think people should be able to do. Bitcoin and another technology is going to help monetize this. So we're going to have to figure out how to deal with those problems and still have our freedom, while at the same time, on the other end, this is ultimately going to test government to find the separation between when a government is going to act more to protect itself as an entity than to protect its people. And I like to think about how one important thing I want to see is I want to see people working in government holding crypto, because when it comes time, it's the same thing with people being able to have a right to have guns, people having the right to freedom of speech. When you have the people in power value the thing, then they're going to be the ones making the rules and defending it. And when they see that it's hurting themselves, they're going to be hesitant to make rules against crypto and things like this. So I think we're going to see governments act in a self-preserving way, and a way to preserve themselves as an entity, not just preserve the kind of overall positivity and well-being of their people, and just self-preserve. And they're going to pit that against the bad side of crypto, which is that we're allowing things like facilitating people monetizing child porn and human trafficking, whatever illegal thing is you hate the most. The government's going to use that against us, and so we're going to have to find the line in the middle, the gray area that we're all happy to live in.
Yep, and that's coming, guys. Get prepared for that. If the government the social attack is absolutely what the government will play, because that's the only play that they got. So they're definitely going to, just like the early days of the internet, same repeated thing. They're going to say the internet is only for child pornography and all this horrible things and drugs and such. So I think that we've learned a lot since then, and we hope that people will understand that when their neighbor is using Bitcoin, right, for a savings account, when their best friend's store now starts accepting Bitcoin, they're going to be like, oh wait. maybe this Bitcoin thing isn't like so bad after all. And again, guys, we're only like one financial crisis away again from more and more people moving into Bitcoin. This is definitely going to happen soon within the next couple of years. I'm pretty sure every major economist at this point has called it. So I don't think there's any secret there. But I think we can close out the show, guys. This was a great show. 3 great topics, and really thank everybody for joining. We really appreciate it. Everybody in the chat and everybody joining us live. We had almost 150 people there in the chat live. So thanks, guys, so much. We're trying to grow our numbers. We're getting more and more people excited about Bitcoin. We're talking Bitcoin more and more here on the network. We have a bunch of shows now that are all different, trying to cover Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in as many ways as we can think of. So we hope you guys are enjoying the content. Let's go ahead and say goodbye to our guests before we close it out. John, please tell us, where can we find out more about you?
Yeah, my name is John Carvalho. I am Bitcoin Error Log on Twitter, and I also have a new business project I started called BitcoinTell.pro, which is a merchandise store for Bitcoin lovers and Bitcoin maximalists. So check it out if you get a chance.
BitcoinTell.pro, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys are a Bitcoin insider, you're going to like this store. Lots of great inside jokes. I think people are going to really enjoy it, especially, again, the people who have been in the space for a while. So thank you for that, John. Francis, where can we find out more about you, sir?
Well, obviously on Twitter at @FrancisPula_. Definitely check out for that blue verified mark. I'm often there. I was gonna take a break last week and write blog posts, but I just couldn't. I'm gonna try this week to take a break off Twitter. So follow my Medium as well. And I'm obviously on the CryptoCast network. If you're Canadian, you can pay your bills and send fiat to third parties with my website bylls.com. And we also have a website, which I never really mentioned because it was in private alpha, which is bitcoinoutlet.com. And we're just about to release the version 2, which we're going to be rolling out. It's going to be a Coinbase competitor in Canada. So I'm really excited about that. You'll hear more, obviously, on that after we release our second version of the app. It looks really fantastic. It's like more easy to use in Coinbase. And I just got to say, I went on John's website, BitcoinTell Pro. I was on there before the show when the show went down for like 2 minutes, and then I looked at all the t-shirts, and I'm like, I have like 6 items in my cart right now. I'm totally serious. As the viewers can tell, like I only wear Bitcoin stuff. Like I have like this Scam Coinbot t-shirt, and I just have like old school, like I just have Bitcoin stuff, and like it's getting really redundant, but I still only have, like, Bitcoin's my only brand. So these t-shirts are really funny. And there's the Bitcoin Troll Army t-shirt. Like, get that, guys. That's gonna be a meme for sure. That's gonna take off. It's fantastic. So yeah, good job, John. I always enjoy. And yeah, I am Bitcoin maximalist. No, I am maximalist, or what is it? I don't know. It's really well done. Like, all the designs are great. So have a look at that and buy them before they're sold out.
Absolutely, guys. So check that out. That is BitcoinTell.pro. And of course, we have our own t-shirts as well over here at the CryptoCast Network. Everybody's got to have the merch, guys. So we have our CryptoCast and our Bitcoin News Show shirts. We have them. We're selling them on Amazon, so they're in all the colors and all the sizes. So definitely check that out. And yeah, guys, check out all the merch. We got a lot of merch, apparently. Check out John's store. Check out the CryptoCast.network. And we really appreciate everybody joining. And until next time, guys, please keep talking Bitcoin. We'll see you later.
Later, guys.